John Benny, please. Mr. Benny.
Mayor and Councillors, an apology has been received this evening from Councillor Sophie Tan. We expect that she might be arriving at the meeting at some stage, but for the time being we will acknowledge her apology.
Thank you. Item number 1.2, acknowledgement of the traditional owners of this land. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, their spirits and their ancestors, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Item number 1.3, offering of prayer. As part of Council's commitment to recognising the cultural and spiritual diversity of our community, the prayer this evening was provided prior to the meeting by Sven Wikarama from the Braham Muhammad World Spiritual University, a member of the Greater Dandenong Interfaith Network. Councillor Lim will be reading that prayer. Please stand.
Om Shanti is a greeting of peace. I will start this reflection with Om Shanti and end the reflection with Om Shanti. First, breathe in peace, breathe out any tension, and again. Now relax the body, feet, shoulder, neck, and your thinking, your mind. Then awaken a memory of your deepest feeling of peace and calm. Remember, listen, allow calm feelings to flow into you and through you. Connect to this feeling of deep peace and calm. Absorb it. Filling yourself with this feeling, gently return to your innermost peaceful and calm place. Finally, feeling refreshed and empowered. From the peaceful feeling of your calm center, let this feeling of calm and peace flow out into your life and into the atmosphere of the meeting you are sharing this evening. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Item number 1.4, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting.
Happy to move, Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Dark,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Mamedi. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 1.5, assembles of councils from the date the 12th of the 10th, 2020.
Happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by
Second, Madam.
Councillor Mamedi. Is there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare the item carried. Item number 2, 2.1, documents for sealing, 2.11. Oh, sorry. I missed one. I'm dreadfully sorry. Item number 1.6, disclosures of interest.
Mayor and Councillors, there is a single disclosure this evening from Councillor Jim Mamedi. It relates to item 2.3.6, Town Planning Application 16 to 46 Cleveland Street, Dandenong. The type of interest is a direct material conflict of interest of a non-pecuniary nature. The nature of the interest is that Councillor Mamedi is the director of a company that has a stall at the Dandenong market. Councillor Mamedi will be required to redeclare the interest prior to the item and then leave the chamber for the matter.
Thank you. Item number 2, 2.1, documents for sealing, 2.11, documents for sealing.
I would like to move it.
Moved by Councillor Trong, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 2.2, documents for tabling. 2.2.1, documents for tabling.
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Mamedi, seconded by Councillor Lim. Is there any questions? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 2.2.2, petitions and joint letters.
I would like
Moved
to move
by
it.
Councillor Trong, seconded by Councillor Foster. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor Dark?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I note on one of the petitions that we've received has to do with the Roth Hetherington Reserve and the dog park that's been proposed. I just want a question just to the relevant officer on how we're tracking along with that at this current minute.
The dog park would be Mr. Bosman, is that you? Thank you, Mr. Bosman.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll get the details related to that correspondence and I'll inform Councillor Dark together with other councillors.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions, councillors? No? Is there any opposition, I should say? As there's no opposition, I declare the item carried. Item number 2.3, statutory planning application. 2.3.1, planning decisions issued by the Planning Minister Delegate, September 2020 to October 2020. Moved by
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Mehmeti, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 2.3.2, planning delegation decisions issued September 2020 to October 2020. Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Formoso. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 2.3.3, town planning application number 39 Princess Highway, Dandenong South, planning application number PLN 17/0039.01.
Mayor, I move that the item be deferred until the next council meeting.
Councillor Dark.
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Dark has deferred this item to the next meeting, seconded by Councillor Mehmeti. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, given that, as far as I've heard, this is a new idea to defer, could I get an explanation from the mover as to why they're planning to defer it?
Councillor Dark, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'm moving to defer this item this evening because I've just been made aware via the applicants who are in the gallery that there's a couple of questions that they were unsure of, particularly around the car park requirements, access to and from the site, and they have not received any correspondence from council or anybody to KX Architecture, their town planner to which they've engaged. So we just had a conversation just then with the Director of Planning. I think it's the best item that this item be deferred. Conversations can take place between the Planning Department and the applicants and then hopefully come to a resolution.
Rightio. Is there any other questions? Is there any opposition for a deferment? No. I declare this item deferred. Thank you. Item number 2.3.4, town planning application number 44 Whitworth Avenue, Springvale. Planning application number PLN 20/0138. Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Milkovich. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question to the Director of Planning that pertains to this application and applications generally in residential areas. And while I understand that this application could only be seen to be adding a small amount of increased congestion to local roads and on-street parking. What I'm interested in, Mayor, is how does council determine in a statistical, objective, using metrics sort of fashion, which local roads are at carrying capacity, particularly given that this road we're talking about is near a large college, high activity around peak school drop-off and pick-up times. And I would like to know from the director what measurements contribute to the council officer recommendation that the road has carrying capacity for higher density, and I'd like to know all the details on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself. Councillor, I have put in place at your request a request through to the traffic engineers so that they can take you through the process that they follow when applications such as these are referred by the planning department to them, and that they then either impose conditions or have no objection, etc. The processes that they follow in assessing those applications. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't explain to you how SIDRA analysis works. I can't explain to you, the capacity thresholds and when they fail and when they don't fail. But it's an exercise that I've asked them to take you through in respect of smaller, larger applications on the smaller streets, etc. And hopefully there'll be a time set aside fairly soon for them to take you through and answer your question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 2.3.5, Town Planning Application number 76 Keys Road, Keysborough, Planning Application PLN 20/0203. Councillor Garrett.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move an alternate motion.
I've got a mover for an alternate motion for this item. Have I got a seconder?
Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Forster. What's your alternate, Councillor Garrard?
Madam Mayor, the essence of my alternate is that the new dwelling be set back 30 metres from the Keys Road front boundary in line with the existing dwelling. An updated arboricultural impact assessment prepared which clearly identifies the trees to be retained, including trees 23 to 25, and any measures required to protect these trees during construction as a result of condition 1.1, and an updated site plan that identifies the trees for retention and these proposed for removal as a result of condition 1.1 and 1.2, and wording changes to 2.21, 22 and 26, and the motion is tabled.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor Mehmedi?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the relevant officer, has the applicant been consulted regarding these amendments? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor, Mr. Bosman?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the nature of the changes, the nature of the amendments that are being proposed, Councillor, are consistent with the nature of the objections. The nature of those objections are certainly made known to the applicant, and there was a discussion with the applicant on whether the applicant was willing to accommodate those changes. The applicant was not willing to accommodate those changes. The alternate motion is an alternate motion that would seek then to have those changes that the objectors sought be then part of the resolution. So has there been consulted? I would say that through the process of the discussion on the nature of the objections, the applicant has been consulted, as he's aware of, and has been consulted on whether they would be willing to move move their structure in accordance with the setbacks that are being proposed? The answer was no.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Is there any other questions, Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mayor. Question also to the Director of Planning. How defensible would this alternate be at VCAT, in the Director's professional opinion?
Mr. Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, through yourself, Councillor, this one might not be as clear-cut maybe as some others. The overall assessment does comply with the guidelines of the Green Wedge Management Plan. There's one small incursion into the setback for about a third of the length of one part of a property wall. But in all other cases, the proposed setbacks exceed the setbacks that are required by the Green Wedge Management Plan. And there's a minor excess where the pitch of the roof at one point goes slightly beyond, I think it's 0.7 of a metre, beyond the height limit, but the structure of itself is within the height limit. The chances that the VCAT will, it's 50-50, but I think that given it has a fairly high degree of compliance with the requirements of the Green Wedge Management Plan, I would say it is probable that it would get cleared. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Is there any other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thanks, Mayor. Bit of a different question to the Director. Director, would it be possible? Now, we know the issue is that if Council passed this alternate and was then put before VCAT, Council then expends a large amount of resource in defending Council's decision, and I believe the Director said in the past it's something in the order of $10,000 per application, give or take. Would it be possible for Council to make a decision, but that I could move an amendment that our decision not be defended at VCAT if the applicant then brought it forward? Because I think in some ways I'm happy to support the alternate, but I'm not happy to support the expenditure of community's money at VCAT on what might be a fraught case. Thank you, Mayor.
I think that's an entirely different matter than what we're discussing at the moment. So is there any other question? Sorry, Mr. Bosman, did you want to say something?
Madam Mayor, it would be very unusual for the local government not to be present at VCAT.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that VCAT might take a bit of a dim view for us not to be present. There's another way. The reason that we are represented, legally represented when officers are overturned in their decisions, is not to put the officer in that invidious position of having to argue against the recommendation that they themselves have put up. But I suppose the other option is that we have another officer from within the organisation pick it up and present from within the organisation. But yes, it's not illegal not to be there, and then VCAT will simply deal with the matter on the papers. The other option, instead of being legally represented, is that we represent ourselves, but from another professional within the office to take the contrary point of view, the point of view that Council then has resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Yes, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to the mover then. Would the mover agree to amend the motion so that process that the Director has just described be followed, whereby we don't, if the Council decision is challenged at VCAT, then we don't employ legal resources but we do have representation in the form of an officer. So that is the question to the mover. Mayor?
Councillor Garrard?
Madam Mayor, I would like to suggest that that's not relevant to the motion that I have passed, and that that's a separate issue, and I don't wish to speak to that.
Thank you. So it looks like, Councillor O'Reilly, your suggestion is not...
Supported.
Yes. So we're still dealing with the alternate at the moment. Is there any other questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? Opposition declared by Councillor Dark. Councillor Garrard, you've got 5 minutes.
Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this motion. I cite the objections made by the residents that live surrounding this property, which there is a number of objections that they have cited, that it is not compliant with the Green Wedge Management Plan, that is not in keeping with the Green Wedge Management Plan, that there are issues such as overlooking noise.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Councillor
Madam Mayor, we just heard from the Director of Planning saying that it does comply with the Green Wedge Management Plan.
So, Councillor Garrard, if you could not mention that, considering it is, it does comply. So, if you could start your thing again.
Thank you,
don't
Madam
get an
Mayor.
extra 5 minutes, so you just get the remainder.
So the issues of concern by the objectors are that it is not in keeping with the semi-rural environment, and that issues such as line of sight to the horizon are also impacted, and that the quality of the life of the residents that are surrounding the property would be profoundly impacted by the dwelling being in the position that was originally proposed, and that there may be an impact in the property values as well.
Thank you. Councillor Forster, as the seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess my concern is the impact that it's going to have on the local residents with the removal of the significant and well-developed trees. I do bear in mind that they are not native trees, but they are well developed, and they have the removal of those trees will have a significant impact on the well-being of the local residents. I'm mindful of perhaps the impact it will have on weather, heat and wind, but also the mental health of perhaps neighbouring that property.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. In opposition, Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. I rise to oppose this on a couple of matters. The first is that the item that was being proposed with the alternate by Councillor Garrett actually is even worse for one of the objectors next door. And the reason why it's worse for the objector next door is the trees on the site in which Councillor Garrett is attempting to save at the front is actually being placed towards the front because the trees along the side perimeter abutting the neighbour and the residents next door are being kept and preserved. And they're being kept and preserved to provide a vista for those within the dwelling at the front of where it is. If Councillor Garrett's motion is carried tonight and that dwelling is then pushed further back in terms of the setback to save the trees at the front, it costs the trees behind it. Now that is even worse for the objector to the side, because instead of having the trees line and abut and create an interface between the two residences, what we actually are now seeing is that you will actually be cutting down those trees, which are actually larger and taller of the ones at the front that Councillor Garrett is attempting to save. And to me, that would then be going against what the objector's concerns are. The objector's concerns particularly are around the interface of the properties next door, the overlooking and the lack of amenity that's going to be had. And I can understand where they're coming from, particularly if they have the concerns around where the vistas and the views are going to be from the residences. But to cut the trees down at the front, which fronts Keys Road, and there's not a whole lot of traffic going down Keys Road at the best of times because it's predominantly farmland, to then cut down older, mature, taller trees along the side towards the rear, to me, it counters the purpose and defeats the purpose of what Councillor Garrett is attempting to achieve. The item in the planning amendment does actually meet the 99.5% of the Green Wedge Management Plan, with the exception of two minor parts, as what the directors mentioned before. And to me, that is something that we must definitely have a look at. We have to have a look, and we have to understand what the Green Wedge Management Plan has got in place. We must understand what you can and can't have. And my belief is that the applicant has tried as best as they possibly can to adhere to the development. To be out by 0.7 metres is nothing. in the scheme of things compared to what we have seen in the Green Wedge over the last 4 years of my previous term and what we've seen in the past. For councillors tonight to agree to this alternate and to do it, to me, would be counterproductive to the objectives and runs against what is actually being recommended by the officers this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Is there any other speakers for or against this alternate? No? Your right to reply, Councillor Garrard.
Madam Chair, thank you. What I would point out to Councillor Dark is that the alternate does accommodate an arboricultural impact statement, and that some of the information Councillor Dark has given us, I believe to be untrue, that the trees of concern and the mature trees are actually the trees that will be cut down with the first application. In fact, smaller trees at the back of the property will be impacted by shifting it back. So, in fact, the trees that the residents are most concerned about will be preserved by the alternate. And that is in keeping with a rural environment, and that will satisfy the adjacent properties. So I believe what Councillor Dark has said is not correct.
Thank you very much. I will put it to a vote. All those in favour of the alternate, please raise your hand. Councillor Trong, Councillor Foster, Councillor Gerard, Councillor Long. Those against? Councillor O'Reilly, Councillor Formoso, Councillor Mamedi, Councillor Lim, Councillor Milkovich, and Councillor Dark. Your alternate has failed. We go back to the original.
I move the item as what's read in the agenda with the officer's recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Dark. The original.
Better second that, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Mamedi. Is there any questions on the original item on this agenda? Is there any opposition? Yep. Just raise your hand that you oppose. Yep.
I oppose.
So, Councillor Dark, please. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor, this won't take 5 minutes as we've just debated the merits of this application. The officer's recommendation has been this evening to approve the permit as what has been approved within the plans provided to this council, with a couple of amendments and conditions which have already been itemised. This is a development within the Green Wedge, which is there to increase a dwelling size for what I would say to be a decent-sized family house. It meets most of the criteria with the exception of a couple of very minor points, and I see no reason why we should go against the officer's recommendation and reject this permit.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Councillor Mamedi, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be pretty brief since we've just debated this item. This property sits on approximately 2.23 hectares, which is probably about 5 acres of land. People have probably bought this property, want to build their dream home on this new property. I don't see it complies 99.5%. It fits what's in the Green Wedge Management Plan. I think councillors have made the right decision to not go with the amendment, and I strongly urge my fellow councillors to support this motion.
Thank you. In opposition, Councillor Gerard, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I would point out to Councillor Mamedi that the applicants will be able to build their dream house. We're just asking that they are considerate of the objections of those around them, and that they consider maintaining the semi-rural intent of the Green Wedge, and that issues such a line of sight of the horizon are also considered. So we're not asking that the dream house is not built. What we're asking them is to be considerate of the environment and the needs of those around them.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Any other speakers for or against? No? Right to reply, Councillor Dark.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor, I don't think much more needs to be said on this item. I think we've debated and we've all said our points. I think, as I said, the officer's recommendation is to approve this, and I think that given what I've read through, it all suits all the criteria, meets all of the criteria, and I think that where it's currently located is in a good position for people to build their family home. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now put it to a vote. All those in favour of the original item, please raise your hand. Councillor Dark, Councillor Milkovich, Councillor Lim, Councillor Mamedi, Councillor Formoso and Councillor O'Reilly. Those against, Councillor Trong, Councillor Forster, Councillor Garrard and Councillor Long. The item is carried. Thank you. Item number 2.3.6, Town Planning Application number 16 to 46 Clearland Street, Dandenong. Planning Application number PLN 15/0888.02.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest, a direct material conflict of interest of a non-pecuniary nature. I'd like to declare that interest and leave the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Mamedi. Councillor Mamedi. Hey, Councillor O'Reilly, can we wait until Councillor Mamedi actually leaves the chamber?
Exits the chamber. Mayor?
I'll read it again. Item number 2.3.6, Town Planning Application number 16 to 46 Clearland Street, Dandenong. Planning Application number PLN 15/0888.02.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternate motion. I would like to move it, please.
Right. Can you give a brief summary of your alternate motion, please?
Yes, Mayor, based on local resident feedback and in keeping a balanced view on this permit, my alternate provides for, rather than live music being 7 days a week until 11 a.m, my alternate provides for live
11 p.m.
Sorry, 11 p.m. My alternate provides for live music Friday and Saturday nights until 11 p.m, with that situation to be reviewed in 12 months. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I've got a mover and I need a seconder for the alternate. Councillor Garrard, you've seconded the motion. Have I got any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition to the alternate? No, there isn't. The alternate is carried. Councillor O'Reilly, you wish to speak to this?
Yes, please, Mayor. So thank you, councillors, for your support. Look, there has been quite a bit of discussion on this, and I take other councillors' viewpoints that one of the things that this council should be doing front and centre is supporting local business, particularly in the time of COVID recovery. But I'm glad that this council has decided tonight to balance that against the surrounding residents of Dandenong Market. They live there, they expect it to be a market, and live music they didn't envisage to be part of that. The recommendation we have now balances that out and allows live music, including karaoke, which some people would call live music, depends on who's singing, to happen 2 nights a week as a starting point and then be reviewed. So I think it's a good win for the applicant as well as the surrounding residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 3, question... Sorry? Oh, sorry. Can we have Councillor Mamedi back, please? Trying to get through it quick. Item number 3, question time, public. Mr. Benny, please.
Mayor and councillors, there are a number of questions this evening. The first is from Nina Kelly of Keysborough. Can council confirm the land currently under construction on Tyres Lane and Stanley Road, Keysborough, will have double width footpath instead of the normal width footpath to accommodate people walking to the shopping centre and the local schools? Mr Van Boxtel could respond, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Nina, for your question. The last section of footpath will be a standard 1.4 metre wide path to match the rest of Tyres Lane. That advice was recently provided to Nina, but she has come back with some further clarification on why Council's taken that position, and we're undertaking a further review of the width of that path, and we'll be back in contact with her shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Benny, please.
The next question is from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. What is the current implementation status of Notice of Motion number 88, advocating for the urgent need for a new Dandenong Police Paddocks Management Plan, in particular the inclusion of information on our social media and website advocacy section? Mr Bosman could respond, Mr Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Mr Bosman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through yourself, I can advise Mr Kerwin that a number of officer meetings have already taken place internally in order to have a considered approach for attending a meeting with Parks Victoria and furtherance of the Notice of Motion. Correspondences have been exchanged at senior executive level between the Council and Parks Victoria executives on the issues to be addressed as part of this initiative. And following that exchange, a meeting with Parks Victoria has now been arranged to start the discussions on the format and detail of a committee of management for the reserve. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr Benny, please.
The next series of questions are from Kevin Walsh. When will the fence for the Maralinga Community Garden in the Chandler Road Reserve be installed? When will the water for the Maralinga Community Garden in the Chandler Road Reserve be connected? When will the electricity for the Maralinga Community Garden in the Chandler Road Reserve be connected? Mr Fiddler can respond.
Thank you, Mr Fiddler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The community consultation for the garden will begin in coming weeks, and a report will be presented to Council in early February. All works, as asked in Mr Walsh's questions, will begin pending endorsement of the consultation report and decisions made by this Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Benny, please. Question number 4 has been...
Yes. The next question was from Eric Chen, but he has subsequently withdrawn that question. Move on to Simon Birch of Springvale South. I've seen many parts of Dandenong benefit from improvement works, but Spring Valley Reserve always seems to get only a tiny fraction of any funds. Why is this so? I'm aware that funding was approved for a master plan some years ago, but very little seems to have been done to the park. What plans do Greater Dandenong Council have for Spring Valley Reserve beyond the current earthworks? Mr Van Boxtel.
Thank you, Mr Van Boxtel.
Through the Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Simon, for your question. The development of the Spring Valley Park has been on hold until a number of issues raised by the Environmental Protection Authority can be addressed. The major one is an improvement to the landfill cap, which is currently underway through the noted earthworks. Once the EPA approves of Council's response at this site, it will then be possible to develop a master plan for its future use. The development of the master plan will be bid for in Council's future budgetary process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Bob. Mr Benny.
The next question is from Heather Lewis of Keysborough. It was clear from the Facebook reaction to the new councillors being sworn in at the mayoral election that few residents could get the webcast working. I could get it working on my 6-year-old iPad, but not my mobile phone or later Samsung tablet. Other experiences were the same, but they weren't as lucky to have as old as device as me. When will there be webcast software that residents can actually use? Current software must be very out of date. Mr Jedge, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Judge.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Heather, for the question. And yes, we would agree that the current live streaming platform is out of date. We have been waiting for the release of our new website to launch our new product. And for those watching online tonight, you will notice that you can actually watch via YouTube tonight, as well as the older platform. And certainly moving forward to future meetings, YouTube will be the desired platform, and that should enable all people to actually watch with relatively ease. So thank you for the question, and yes, we are addressing it tonight.
Thank you, Mr Judge. Mr Benny.
Next question is from Sabah Walsh of Keysborough. On behalf of the Maralinga Community Garden, if a shipping container is more affordable, would it be allowable to have one on site rather than a shed? Mr Fiddler.
Mr Fiddler, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In accordance with Council policy, shipping containers are not allowed to be placed anywhere on council land or roads. In some circumstances, shipping containers may be allowed on private property, depending on the zoning of the property and the use of the container. For the Maralinga Community Garden, the community consultation concept plan needs to show all of the proposed elements and footprint that would affect the overall functionality and aesthetics of the park. Council would work through and agree possibly to an exemption to the policy and allow a container if it is screened or clad and is considered part of the design element. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fiedler. Mr. Benny, please.
Yes, the next question is from Reynaldo Pinchiera of Dandenong North, and I believe Reynaldo is in the gallery. I'm a person who is very concerned about the dangerous driving manner of some motorists along Brady Road in Dandenong North, in particular within the shopping centre section of this road, which is a very busy retail location. I've noticed that some motorists do not slow down as they are approaching the zebra crossing lights, and I've witnessed some near misses between pedestrians and vehicles. I've also noticed some near misses between vehicles as well, and I think that a road accident is a real possibility. Although most motorists and pedestrians do the right thing, a small but irresponsible and immature minority are doing the wrong thing. In order to prevent a potential accident and to make certain motorists modify their immature, irresponsible behaviour, I believe speed humps would be a great solution for this road safety problem. It will ensure that motorists and local residents will have a more secure shopping precinct. Speed humps have been an effective road safety measure in other locations within our municipality. Brady Road Shopping Centre precinct is a popular and vibrant retail area of Dandenong North. It is an area where people of all ages go to shop and socialise, and it's important for this precinct to be a safe shopping centre location. That's why I think the introduction of speed humps would be a great way to ensure the safety of both pedestrians and motorists. Mr Van Boxtel could respond, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Van Boxtel, please.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Ronaldo, for your question. We have previously advocated to the Department of Transport for the introduction of a 40-kilometre speed limit through this particular shopping precinct, but this was unsuccessful. Council's budget for traffic calming treatments is limited relative to the potential sites requiring some form of infrastructure intervention. The candidate projects are therefore prioritised and ranked using our local area traffic management prioritisation program, which considers criteria such as vehicle speeds, volumes, and proximity to pedestrians in determining which location receives the limited funding available. Brady Road, near the shops, is within this program. However, there are currently a number of other locations where the road safety risk is greater at this time. We will arrange for updated traffic surveys to be undertaken on Brady Road to see if the speeds and volumes have changed, which may alter the ranking of this particular location. If residents witness inappropriate driver behaviour, they are advised to report this through Crime Stoppers, as this will assist the police with enforcing such behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Boxtel. Mr. Benny, please.
Supplementary, just on that question.
Yes.
Just a supplementary to the relevant officer. I understand we contacted Vic Roads to talk about a 40-kilometre speed limit along Brady Road. One thing I've learned is with Vic Roads, you need to approach them about 50 times before they say yes. Can we approach them again just to see, one, what their reasoning behind it, and two, to give another push to see if we can get a 40-kilometre limit along Brady Road?
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Yes, we can follow that up and see what their response is. Given there's been a number of changes to that agency as well, there's no harm in continuing to try, see if we can get support for initiatives such as this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Benny, please.
The next question is from Adam Murray of Keysborough. Respectfully, what is Greater Dandenong Council doing to save the 1877 Keysborough Uniting Church located on Chapel Road from being destroyed? Mr Bosman can respond to Madam Mayor.
Mr. Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, through yourself and in answer to Mr Murray, the council officers are engaged in discussion with various office holders within the synod and structures of the Uniting Church of Australia, trying to find a way to save the old church. Those discussions are presently going on. They've been going on for a while and they continue. Council has also engaged the services of a heritage architect to similarly advise it, that being the Council, and also with a view of providing that advice and input to the Uniting Church of Australia. I might just state that the advice or the response that we have to date from the Uniting Church of Australia is that the building is surplus to their needs, and at this stage they don't intend to invest in the building, but the discussions continue. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Mr. Benny, please.
The next question is from Heather Lewis of Keysborough. Can you please advise what Council is doing to encourage people to use sustainable waste methods like composting or worm farms? Some other councils give rebates. Maybe a bulk deal with a local manufacturer or composter of composters and worm farms. I have a worm farm and all of my organic waste is put into this, and the worm tea is an amazing fertiliser. Now, I had assigned that to Mr. Bosman, but it may in fact be Mr. Van Boxtel. Mr. Van Boxtel.
Mr. Van Boxtel, please.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Heather, for your question. Council delivers an extensive waste education programming around composting and worm farming. The sessions are delivered by our waste services team with a clear focus on good environmental outcome. Due to COVID-19, these are currently undertaken in a webinar format and are advertised on Council's website and through our social media platforms, and our residents are most welcome to register online. Council will also be introducing food into our garden waste bin system as of April of 2021. We are about to commence an extensive media and marketing campaign and education strategy to inform residents regarding this change. I also note that there's a notice of motion item that crosses over with a similar conversation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Boxtel. Mr. Benny, please.
The next two series of questions come from Matthew Kerwin of Noble Park. Now, I'd like to pause and confirm that under Council's governance rules, only 3 public questions are allowable at any Council meeting by any particular questioner. There was a question asked earlier in this session from Matthew Kerwin, and these 2 items together include multiple questions. It has been my determination that these are actually a series of questions rather than matters. So therefore, on this occasion, we're in a position to ask 2 of those questions, and the rest will be taken on notice. I would also like to emphasise that all of the questions that are submitted will be addressed and responded to, and the questioner has requested that that be done by email. So a response by email will be made to Mr. Kerwin for all of the items that are submitted. But for now, and for this item, it relates to the quarterly performance report on the agenda. A, when will the governance structures for kindergartens and childcare be finalised and new leases start being issued? And the second one would go to the same director. When is it expected that the revised community development and community hub frameworks will be exhibited for public comment? And given the close relationship with the new diversity, access and equity policy, will that be exhibited on at the same time? And if not, why not? Mr. Fiddler can respond, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Matthew Kerwin, for the questions. The City of Greater Dandenong's annual plan has a current action to review governance structures for kinder and childcare provision, and this action seeks to ensure that early childhood services are adequately structured for a period of significant growth beginning in 2022 with the state government's 3-year-old kindergarten rollout. The governance review is scheduled for completion by the end of the 2021 financial year, and current leases will remain in overholding pending the important governance review, and also to accommodate outcomes of partnership work Council is currently doing with the Department of Education towards the development of a council-specific kindergarten infrastructure service plan. And in relation to the next question, Madam Mayor, the 2 frameworks and the revised diversity, access and equity policy will be exhibited for a minimum of 28 days with public display commencing in mid-February 2021. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Fiddler. Mr Benny, please.
So the remaining 8 questions all relate to different matters under the quarterly performance report, and as stated, they will be responded to by email. The next series of questions, also from Matthew Kerwin, will be responded to. They relate to very important matters relating to IBAC and the local government integrity review, and they too, there's about 6 of those, will be responded to comprehensively by email. The next question is from Gay Guest of Keysborough. Maralinga Community Garden concept was approved by our former council, and prior to that approval and ever since, the committee have been working diligently through lockdown to get this project off the ground. We've already paid annual subscriptions for incorporation and public liability insurance. We need to put in an order for biofilter growing beds and a date for delivery to the site. When will the Maralinga community consultation process take place, and how long until after the consultation will the Maralinga community garden be able to be established? Will consultation be carried out in the next 3 weeks so that we can get started? This matter was in part addressed by Mr Fiddler earlier, but Mr Fiddler may have some additional information.
Thank you, Mr Fiddler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Gay, for your question. Just very briefly, yes, the consultation will start in the next 3 weeks, and then we can follow up from there what services and things need to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Fiddler. Mr Benny, please.
Next question is also from Gay Guest. The newly installed mayor says one of his initial focus areas will be addressing the cleanliness issues that are staining our community. Our city is better than dog waste on footpaths and in parks, dumped rubbish and overflowing rubbish bins. We need our residents on board to work beside us, and then I believe we can combat it. It is the same here. Neglected properties that line our main thoroughfares just lower the tone of the area irrevocably. If councillors were responsible for their own letterboxing, then they should easily be able to identify the weaknesses in their own wards without even having to think about it, and be able to put in some snap, send, solve or customer requests. Culturally now, councillors should be reaching out to their communities to encourage them to, 1, take pride in their homes and their neighbourhoods, 2, encourage their constituents to not pave every inch of their yards with hard concrete surfaces, 3, encourage grass mowing and suitable plantings, 4, to live sustainably. Councillors should be encouraging pride in their wards, pride in our city. Pride in our city is sorely lacking, and council can't be expected to do it all. Pride in our city campaign would hopefully encourage everyone to take pride in their local area by helping make a difference in our neighbourhoods, parks and open spaces. We have had a Christmas lights competition in the past. Now we need to pivot and find the Achilles heel to reinvigorate local neighbourhoods. An ex-councillor became a community consultant, and he would cruise his local area and vigorously put in customer reports to council for action. There used to be a tidy town competition. The tidiest street got assigned to advertise their commitment. Can we introduce a pride in our city competition where people can post images of improvements like the Spoonsville villages and photos of groups actively involved in picking up rubbish, for instance, like Clean Up Australia Day? Whose ward would win tidy town or the tidiest street? In response, I can advise Ms Guest that there's probably no principal matter that council would disagree with, but there is a lot in this question, and there is a lot for council to consider, and I would suggest that we take the matter essentially on notice, but also refer it as a matter for consideration under the council plan for the year ahead, and for all councillors to, I guess, express their views and determine their position in relation to some of the ideas that Gay Guest has presented. The next question is also from Gay Guest. It's her third question, I should note, of Keysborough. Lockdown, caretaker mode and 51 millimetres of rain have certainly pointed out the warts and all of older and neglected wards. 10 of the 11 wards are like an old cemetery, neglected, unkempt, forgotten, dilapidated, but have great bones and potential if only there was some TLC shown by the landowners and landlords. Abandoned properties are the worst, not abandoned by COVID, but left unattended to rot because homeowners have left them to perish. Several properties have had to have council intervention to clean them up. The neighbours are so relieved to see the vacant houses tidied, to have street appeal, but it becomes it comes under a whole other law to get the backyard cleaned up, and apparently that area is disgusting and a worry about snakes and fire hazards. Is there a land tax for abandoned properties in CGD? If not, why not? Why do we allow the older parts of our city to become so denigrated, ignored and abandoned without applying an extra tax on these abandoned properties? Mr Bosman can respond, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Make sure that I have all the details that I wish to pass on to. Under Section 72G of the Local Government Act, councils are unable to impose taxes. That section, Madam Mayor, through to Ms Guest, that section states that unless there is a clear and express power to do so under this Act or any other authorising act, a local law must not, amongst other things, impose any tax. And I won't read out the other things that are within that section. Therefore, there is no express power to tax unkempt properties under any act where we are unable to tax such properties. It should be noted that when council does clean properties to bring them into compliance with the local law standards, that those costs are recoverable from the property owner by the Local Government Act's provisions. In regard to the local law regarding unkempt properties, the local law requires an authorised officer to make... I keep losing my page on this. To make judgments based on criteria to assess if the property is in non-compliance. Once assessed as being in non-compliance, officers work with the owners and attempt to have a property brought into compliance. If that doesn't occur, council will perform the works as mentioned previously and then recover the costs from the owner. However, the advice on the local law's limitations aside, it is possible that council may wish to consider the implementation of a derelict property differential rate, which is applied in some other councils, for example in Frankston. This can be further discussed by council during the 21-22 annual budget process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Mr Benny, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. There are two questions here which refer to a similar item, so I'll read them both out and then ask Mr Bosman to respond. The first is from Shauna Lavis of Noble Park. The residents of Yarraman Village would like an update on current negotiations with the developers in regards to the red gum trees. We've been feeling deflated and kept out of the loop during the Vcat hearing, which has caused some stress in the community. Thank you, and your hard work is greatly appreciated. The next question is from Gordon Dan of Noble Park. Can councillors and or council officers report progress in negotiations with Village Building Company for the buyback of the land bordered by Braille Street, Hannah Street, Harrison Drive and the Eastlink Trail at the company's Yarraman Village development, where a stand of more than 20 mature river red gum trees are threatened by plans for 8 more houses in a crammed site of 150. All councillors and or CGD officers report on moves to challenge the latest Vcat decision apropos the land in the Supreme Court. Residents at Yarraman look forward to creating a creative public open space on the land, the only such space in the development. Mr Bosman can respond to both questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bosman.
Madam Mayor, thank you through yourself. The answer, as the CEO has indicated, is an answer to both questions. Council, through its lawyers, have approached the developer and have commenced discussions on the possible purchase of these red gums and to purchase them from the developer. These discussions are presently being undertaken by both parties. As to challenging the Supreme Court or their order of Vcat, challenging at the Supreme Court the order of Vcat to issue a permit with removal of these trees, there is no legal basis which such a challenge can be made. That option has been fully investigated by Council's legal team, and I can confirm it is not an option open to Council. Over the years, at times when the developer has sought to remove these trees, Council has consistently opposed such an outcome. This time, however, we did not have Vcat support, and this time the applicant was successful in getting an order from Vcat for the removal. Council, however, remains unequivocal in its desire to see the trees retained, and it will continue in the discussions recently commenced with the developer. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Mr. Benny, please.
The next question is from Lordana Ember of Keysborough. I can't find any updates on the council website as to how council's appeal the VPA works approval of the Ordish Road waste to energy bioincineration plant is going. What is the current situation? Can something be put on council's website, Facebook page to inform residents of what is currently happening and what is likely to happen next year? Mr. Bosman, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Bosman, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can answer the question then to Loredana Ember with regard to these EPA works. Council and its legal team continue to work extensively in preparation for this appeal against the issuing of EPA works approval. This is a matter that is currently before VCAT. In terms of the status of this matter, the applicant and the EPA recently applied to VCAT to have Council's appeal struck out, which, had it been successful, would have meant the appeal would not have proceeded to a hearing. I'm pleased to advise that Council was successful, defending that argument, in not having the matter struck out, and will now proceed to a full VCAT hearing, which is scheduled to occur from the 1st to the 5th of February 2021. Once the hearing is completed, it is likely that VCAT will issue a final decision approximately 4 to 6 weeks later. In light of this recent strikeout application outcome, which occurred last week, Council officers are arranging to update the Council website with its current status. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Mr. Benny, please.
The next question is from Lisa Hartzenberg of Dandenong. What is the status of the Dandenong Community Hub concept design, and when will the concept design go out for consultation? Mr. Fiddler.
Mr. Fiddler, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Lisa, for the question. Council is in the process of recruiting a consultant for this project. As previously discussed at council meetings, we envisage the community consultation regarding site options and concept plans will take place around April of next year, with the project concluded by the end of the financial year. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fiddler. Mr. Benny, please.
Next question is from Sylvia Mastrogiovanni of Dandenong. What is the status of the current Development Victoria EOI for Central Dandenong? How is Council involved, and when is there going to be community consultation? Mr. Van Boxtel, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Van Boxtel, please.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Sylvia, for your question. Development Victoria is expected to announce the outcome in the coming weeks. It is anticipated that any announcement would provide details on future community consultation.
Thank you, Mr. Van Boxtel. Mr. Benny, please.
Next question is also from Sylvia Mastrogiovanni. Now that the Dandenong Civic Centre customer service area is open, why has the underground car park not reopened to the public? It only closed earlier this year when the customer service centre closed due to COVID-19. Mr. Jenge could respond, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Jenge,
through you, Madam Mayor. The closure of the basement car park still represents an important part of our COVID safe plan in terms of recording the names and addresses of all people who visit this centre. Council will revisit this issue during the early part of 2021, particularly if restrictions change from what they are at present.
Thank you, Mr. Jenge. Mr. Benny, please.
The final question is from Sylvia Mastrogiovanni. When will the results of the early public consultation on the 21-22 budget be made public? Mr. Jenge, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Jenge,
through you, Madam Mayor, this is an easy one for me because they were released last week. So I would point the questioner back to our website on the annual budget consultation process, where a summary of the outcomes of stage 1 consultation are included on the website now.
Thank you, Mr. Jenge. Mr. Benny? Yes.
Mayor and councillors, there was one public question taken on notice at the last meeting. That was from Leah of Dandenong. It related to problems caused by increasing presence of townhouses on small blocks of land. That question has now been answered and is tabled this evening.
Thank you, Mr Benning. Item number 4, Officers' Report Part 2, 4.1 Finance and Budget, 4.1.1 General Valuation 2020 Return. Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Formoso. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare the item carried. Councillor Dark, you wish to speak on this item?
I do, Mayor, I do. Mayor, I just wish to congratulate the Corporate Services Director, particularly the Evaluations and Finance team, for doing this evaluations over the last 12 months. And to Council's also Valuar, which has spent a considerable amount of time going through it as well. This is actually quite an interesting time because this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, in the city of Great Dandenong that our total rateable income or total valuable properties has exceeded $50 billion. So it's 50 billion, 582 million, 423,700. That's a good sign that people who are buying or own property in the city of Great Dandenong, investments are increasing. A lot of the work that this council has done in improving the infrastructure and livelihoods of residents is paying off, and that's always a very good sign. The only part I'd say is I apologise in advance for those people who pay land tax, as these valuations also provided to State Revenue Office for their land tax calculations. So I apologise in advance for anybody who does pay land tax.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Item number 4.2, Policy and Strategy, 4.2.1, quarter performance report.
Happy to move again.
Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Garrett. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor Mehdi?
I read in the Healthy, Livable and Sustainable City section, there was 1,067 street trees were planted. That seems like a lot of street trees. Is that correct? And where were they planted?
Mr Van Boxel, is that you?
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mehdi. I'll have to chase up some details for you. I expect the number is correct. We've actually been doing a lot of tree planting in recent times, both on our streets and also in our reserves, using some of the Working for Victoria resources that we have available at the moment. But I'll chase up some details offline and get you the details. Thank you.
I look forward for that, and also locations as well.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3, Other. 4.3.1, Draft Minutes and Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting, 2nd of September 2020. Moved by Councillor Dark, seconded by Councillor Lim. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3.2, Arts Advisory Board Terms of Reference Endorsement. Moved by Councillor Gerard, seconded by Councillor Dark. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3.3, Dandenong Police Paddock Sports Precinct Concept Plan. Moved by Councillor Milkovich, seconded by Councillor Dark. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3.4, naming of the Ross Reserve Pavilion. Moved by Councillor Mamedi, seconded by Councillor Forster. Is there any questions, councillors? Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. A question to the relevant officer. Note in the report that Councillor Rosblade's name couldn't be used on this one. Is there still opportunities for some sort of recognition for former former Mayor and Councillor Blades. Is that still being investigated in some form? Thank you, Mayor.
Mr Jench, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Riley, there's certainly opportunities for us to name rooms in that pavilion about Councillor Blades. We certainly can't name the pavilion after Councillor Blades while she's living, and we certainly hope she lives for a lot longer yet. But we can separately recognise her by looking at what aspects of that pavilion, inside the pavilion, we can actually use to actually give her appropriate recognition.
Thank you, Mr Jench. Is there any other questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3.5, Disability Advisory Committee, new members. Moved by Councillor Garrard, seconded by Councillor Forster. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3.6, response to notice of motion number 80, proposal to proceed no further with the draft Wold Turner Reserve Master Plan, Noble Park North. Councillor Formoso.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the item be deferred, please.
Councillor Formoso wants this item deferred.
Seconded, Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Dark. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition for the deferment? No? I declare this item deferred to a later date. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I just want to thank my colleagues and Councillor Formoso for moving the deferral on this item. This was an item in the last council term that involved considerable debate and a lot of community angst about what was a significant portion of money spent on the master plan. I think it'll be interesting to see, particularly as councillors are briefed and the new councillors being the new 5, on what exactly this master plan had proposed and the benefits it had proposed to the community, and hopefully then we'll be able to come to a proper resolution so that the community can finally see some infrastructure.
Thank you, Councillor Dark. Item number 4.3.7, reports on matters discussed at council briefing session and pre-council meetings, 28th of September, 5th of October and the 12th of October 2020.
Going to move that, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Mehmeti,
Seconded
by Councillor Dark. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 4.3.8, list of registered correspondence to Mayor and councillors. Moved by Councillor Trung, seconded by Councillor Garrett. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? As there's no opposition, I declare this item carried. Item number 5, notice of motions. 5.1, notice of motion number 1, compost bin rebate. Councillor Garrett.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. As stated in the council minutes of the meeting on...
Hang on. Sorry, you're moving it?
Sorry.
That's all. I need a seconder, please. Councillor O'Reilly. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any opposition? There's no opposition. The motion's carried. You now can actually get up.
Thank you. As stated in the council minutes of the meeting on Monday, the 24th of August 2020, home composting will not only reduce the volume and cost of processing FOGO, but will also deliver an immediate benefit to the home garden. We will actively promote composting as a beneficial alternative to households. However, we need to consider further that just promoting home composting, we need to incentivise, to encourage behaviour change, and also to take a leadership position. Other councils like Monash and Casey provide a rebate for compost bins. We should consider doing this. So the motion is that officers present a report to Council meeting before the end of February 2021 with the costs and benefit of a compost bin rebate.
Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Garrard for her motion, and thank you to councillors for their support. I think the theme of this council going forward should be a clean COVID recovery. And while compost bins may seem to be a small part of it, it's all fitting into what we see as quite a number of policies coming forward, such as what's been mentioned with food organics being put into the bin. But, I mean, if you don't need to put your food scraps in the bin, put them in a compost bin, even better. So I think this idea from Councillor Garrard will be investigated. Other councils are doing it. I think it'll be relatively low cost. I think we can use it on several promotions. And compost isn't just about smelly manure. It's really about us thinking sustainably and acting sustainably. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Any other speakers? No. Item number 6, reports from councillors, delegates and councillors' questions. Councillor Trong, please. Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just brief report. We've got, I'll be attending an MAV board meeting this Friday representing the Metropolitan Southeast region. Following the retirement of Councillor Coral Ross, Councillor Josh Gilligan was elected as interim president until the MAV proper elections happen. I think it's about March next year, so just a few months. One of the main issues that the MAV's contending with at the moment is its licence to operate WorkSafe, which is like a collective group on behalf of municipalities across Victoria. That is currently under challenge by WorkSafe Victoria, which would, and if the MAV lost that licence, it would be a shame because the MAV runs it specifically for local government, has a lot of knowledge on safe work practices in local government. So we'll wait to see the outcome of that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Formoso.
Nothing as yet. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Forster.
Nothing at this stage.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Garrett.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've had various meetings with residents from Keysborough South on some issues of concern, which are informing the work that I'm doing going forward. With Madam's permission, I'd like to ask questions tonight of the council. My first question is, what is the council's climate emergency implementation budget being used for?
Mr. Van Boxel, please. Oh, sorry, Mr. Bosman. I'm dreadfully sorry.
Madam Mayor, Councillor, the funds have been used. I must have made the detail that I'll do. To accelerate the fundability of this operation. We showcase the different certainly facilitate working with local vote on the operation. Project will build on the initial. Firing line. Yes.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrett.
Through you, Madam Mayor. My second question is, the Council has resolved to deliver a concept plan on the whole of Westwood Boulevard Reserve at the start of 2021. Is that currently on track?
Mr Bosman, thank you.
Madam Mayor, through yourself again, to you, Councillor. Council officers have prepared a draft concept plan for the Westwood Boulevard Reserve in response to the community's feedback from the survey. This is on track for community notification at the start of 2021. The proposed improvements to this neighbourhood level reserve are guided by the Open Space Strategies Park Development Standard, Playground Strategy and Action Plan 2013-2023, and other supporting strategies and policies and their guiding budgetary framework. And I just made a note here that a CIP bid for 21-22, the financial year 2021-22, for the installation of a public toilet has been submitted for consideration as part of Council's budget process for the area.
Thank you, Mr Bosman. Councillor Garrett.
Through you, Madam Mayor. On October the 24th, the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons received its 50th ratification. The treaty prohibits nations from developing, testing, producing, manufacturing, transferring, processing, stockpiling, using or threatening to use nuclear weapons or allowing nuclear weapons to be stationed on their territory. Under the treaty, nuclear weapons will be banned under international law on January the 22nd, 2021. Unfortunately, Australia has not yet joined this treaty. 30 Australian councils have endorsed the ICANN Cities Appeal in celebration of the treaty. Will the City of Greater Dandenong make the world a safer place and embrace the ICANN Cities Appeal?
Mr Benny, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think that's a question as much for the council and the community as is for anyone else, and I think it would be unfair for that matter to be canvassed this evening without councillors forming a view together at another time. So I propose that the question be taken on notice and be raised at a briefing session soon for all councillors to consider. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that all, Councillor Garrett? Councillor Mehmedi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was invited by the Australian Albanian community on Saturday to celebrate the 108th Independence Day of Albania. There was a flag-raising ceremony at Federation Square, and what made it more special this year was, for the first time in the history in Australia, there was an Albanian ambassador who is now set up in Canberra, who visited Melbourne for the first time. And after the flag raising, I was fortunate enough to bring him into the city of Greater Dandenong and show him around our beautiful city and our local community, which he was very, very impressed, and he did say he would like to come back and visit all of us in the near future. Madam Mayor, just some questions. Over the last few months, as we know, Dandenong Park has been rejuvenated. Approximately about $7 million have been spent over the last decade. It looks fantastic. Many of the residents have complimented the council on the facilities that they have there now. I drive past on many afternoons and I see hundreds of people there, whether they're exercising or just casually sitting down on one of the park benches. It's beautiful to see. But some of the residents have complained that every now and then we get some rough sleepers. And I know me and yourself, yes, who have complained a few times to council officers. Can we have an update on what do we, how do we make sure that they don't keep on coming back? Because it's one of our premium sites in the city. We want to make sure that it looks clean and entices families to come back. So, moving forward, what can we do to make sure that they don't come back?
Mr. Bosman. Oh, Mr. Fiddler, sorry.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam Mayor.
Bosman.
We might share this one.
Sorry.
What we do is when we discover homeless people, we try and engage with them through the relevant housing services. If there is antisocial or criminal behaviour, we work very closely with police community units as well. Through the COVID period, we've actually been able to house a lot of people in local hotels, and then some of those housing services have been funded as well through the state government to find more permanent accommodation. So we're in a process of trying to move people into more permanent, secure accommodation and address the issues as we find them in the park. I know the local laws team and the gardeners and people that regularly go there, the cleansing units, they'll be raising the concerns to us when they're seeing people. We are trying to engage with them when we do see them and try and offer some support.
Thank you, Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Mayor,
Mehmedi.
and thank you for that, Mr. Fiddler. Your staff and Mr. Bosman's staff have done a great job in moving them on and getting accommodation. That's what I want, an outcome where they are looked after. So it's a win-win for everybody in the community. I've had a few residents call me that they live in Alice Street, Dandenong, and they turn left or right onto Webster Street. There's trucks or heavy vehicles parked on the corner. Can I just ask, through you, Madam Mayor, to the relevant officer, can we just have that location looked at, maybe putting some no standing signs? Because I've heard residents tell me that they've had some really, really close near misses. So we don't want nothing to happen, very serious accident there. Can we have a look at, it's the corner of Alice and Webster Street.
Mr. Van Boxel, please.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mehmedi, for that query. We'll have our transport team have a look at that issue and see if it's appropriate to introduce parking restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mehmedi.
Madam Mayor, last one. I've been on the back of my head for about 3, 4, 5 months. The bridge, as you're going down Princess Highway, turning right onto Dandenong Frankston Road, a car smashed into the barriers there. I don't know for how long, but now the barriers are all down. Bushes are growing everywhere. We just need to, I think it might be a Vic Roads thing, but we really need to get on top of it and write a letter to Vic Roads through you, Madam Mayor, that it's just not good. It's not a good look. The barriers are down, the bushes are overgrown, and I wouldn't even want to walk on that side of the bridge. So if we can write a letter, and I think it needs to be looked into ASAP.
Thank you. Mr. Van Boxel.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Mehmedi, again. Yeah, we'll follow that up with the Department of Transport, who are responsible for that structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lim, please. Thank you. Councillor Milkovich, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to say that in my adventures last week, I've had a pleasure of having a really constructive meeting with my fellow councillors. I'm one of the new elected members, obviously, and I think we had some really great discussions. I'd like to thank you for that, first of all. Now, in regards to the questions, I'd like to ask if it's possible for a mayor to endorse a letter to one of our lovely Rosewood Downs Dandenong North residents who has gone through extensive and really a lot of trouble to write more than 1,600 smiley faces, cut them out and delivered them during the COVID crisis with the messages of hope for our local residents. It was not for the publicity. She wants to stay anonymous to public, but I haven't managed to find out who that person was, and I'd like, if I can please ask for that to be done whenever first time convenient, Madam Mayor.
That'd be not a problem.
Thank you very much. Another quick question. I've had one of the residents ask a serious question. The Hatcham Park is obviously a premium Dandenong Park, Dandenong North Park. However, we seem to have a problem with rubbish being strewn everywhere. And I was wondering if it's possible for council officers to either increase the number of bins or maybe patrols or install larger dumpsters somewhere close to the site where we get a lot of visitors from even the outside, from Dufton area, Endeavour Hills, quite a far away. And it seems to become a problem with Facebook posts. Not that I'm guided by Facebook, but there is obviously an issue where glass bottles are left strewn around. Obviously, there's a dog park, so there's safety issues as well on top of everything.
Thank you. Mr. Van Boxel, please.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Milkovich. Yeah, we'll investigate that. So Hatcham Park is the reserve you mentioned? Yeah. Yeah, we'll have a look at the need for additional bins and patrols. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor
And last,
Milkovich.
I've gone sort of, in the last couple of years, I haven't really visited Dandenong Central, but for business purposes a lot of times because the area was quite sort of, not vibrant with restaurants or whatever. I've, however, made an effort the other day with my family to visit one of the ice cream shops over there. It was quite a nice warm evening, and my kids really loved it and enjoyed it. The ice cream was fantastic. And we took a walk basically from this end of Lonsdale Street all the way up to KFC and then sort of around Thomas Street back, which is lovely to see that the area is coming back to life. Hopefully it continues the trend. I have noticed one little bit of problem is that there is a lot of rubbish being strewn around again by visitors. Like I said, empty ice cream cups, full ice cream cups, leftovers from kebabs. It's a safety issues in some aspects, but it's also quite an ugly sighting if we're trying to portray, especially around this sort of area here where it's nice buildings. I was wondering if we can, I don't know, maybe increase the patrols at night, a bit of a scrutiny with the local restaurant owners. There was, at the other end of the street, there was an issue where people were congregating, sitting on a footpath as well, which obviously is not an ideal situation with the COVID, going around. So if we can do something just to keep that trend, keep that momentum going, that'll be much appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Benny, please.
Mr. Van Boxtel may wish to add to the response, but given that he has a number of responsibilities, including the promotion of the activity centre, which we are all recognising is on a journey to success, we hope. The council has previously invested heavily in looking after the premium asset that it has in Dandenong, but I would acknowledge that we probably do that more during the business hours of any day, and the council needs to become increasingly flexible around having services in the after hours. And if evenings are becoming increasingly popular and you are reporting and we are finding that there is litter arising from those after hours success times, then we would, I think, need to be looking a bit differently around how we resource that. So I would give you my commitment that we will want to look at that. We would do the same thing in Springvale, quite frankly, because we don't want any of this littering or conduct or behaviour to draw away from what we want to be premium activity centres. But unless Mr. Van Boxtel has got anything further to add, and he says no, we will take that matter and have a further look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Councillor Milkovich.
Could I just add one more thing? We should also maybe look at after-hour parking arrangements, because it is quite heavily parked around here. God forbid that we have an emergency of any kind, there will be issues, especially with the fire brigade and ambulances, police more so, but I'm thinking these two crucial services should have access to the service lanes on Princess Highway and also spots where they can go, if the need arises, where they can actually act appropriately. I think that's also another issue we can maybe try and monitor after hours a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dark.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mayor, I just wish to start off first with something that I actually have been forgetting to raise in the past, and myself and Councillor Mehmedi, and from the previous council, former Councillor Sampi and former Councillor Brown have been very tireless in advocating for the Hemming Street precinct to be upgraded and increase in funds. And there was a notice of motion which Councillor Sampi had lodged, and we've been advocating for about 18 months now. Myself and Councillor Mehmedi were down at Hemming Street a couple of weeks ago now, to be there basically with the Dandenong leader for the announcement of an allocation of grant of $400,000 for mobile CCTV for the Dandenong West precinct. It's been heavily reported there's been issues with crime, antisocial behaviour through the side streets, and the way that we've been able to combat that is by having a mobile CCTV trailer, which, as I said, we were successful by the state government receiving $400,000. My next question I have, or the first question I've got, is I'm aware that there has been significant issues with the Springvale White Eagles Soccer Club in Perry Road in Keysborough. Those issues accumulated down at the recent AGM, to which there was a change of the executive, and I'm aware that there are a lot of other factors and issues which are currently being involved. Several members of the Noble Park Dreener Soccer Club, which is the one that we've been doing a lot of work with in Parkville Reserve, have reached out to me asking whether we could potentially just get in touch with the White Eagles, see whether there's something we could do in terms of assistance through either the Community Services Director in providing assistance in governance processes and things like that, or also through the Engineering Director to do with some issues they've got with minor issues to do with the infrastructure on site. I'm aware that it is a privately owned site, but if we could just have the relevant directors have a look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we've been in contact with the club throughout this year, offering assistance. We understand it's a private club, but yeah, we'll continue to work with them to see where we can provide support and potential opportunities for them to play elsewhere where they need to in those training times. So our support and rec team are working with them, and hopefully in the near future I'll be able to give an update on how that's progressing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question has to do with the recent flooding episode which we had throughout the city of Grey Dandenong. I'm aware that the engineering team had gone to assess several streets which had experienced significantly larger flooding than others. And there was an assessment done of several drains. I just want to find out from the relevant officer how we went with the investigation of the drain system.
Mr Van Boxtel, please.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Dark. I'll have to take that question on notice and get back to you.
Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. The next two questions I've got are affiliated with the master plans that the council has in place. The first, I just want to get an update on where the Raleigh Allen master plan is at this current stage. And second, I'm aware that the Wachta Reserve has been undergoing a significant amount of construction works with the reinstatement of the wetlands that this council had funded some time ago. I just want to also get an update on that one as well, if I could please.
Mr Bosman, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Through yourself, certainly, Councillor, would be more than what I can give you tonight. The wetland upgrades, etc., where we are and what follows next. So, for the benefit of yourself and the councillors, I'll do a short memo and have that sent out in the course of the next couple of days on those plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, the next question I have is with regards to a resident that contacted me in Festival Crescent in Keysborough about a significantly large tree that has had the root system which is pulling apart both the curb and channel and the footpath. I will forward the email through the relevant director, but if we could please have that looked at as a matter of priority.
Yep. Mr Van Boxtel, please.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Dark. If you could send us the property address, we could investigate that immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, my final question this evening, it's come to my attention from what I've seen in Central Dandenong, is it looks like the Chisholm University or the Chisholm TAFE have left Central Dandenong. Do we receive any correspondence about them potentially leaving Central Dandenong or provide a reason as to why they've vacated their site, given that they provide a lot of local economic impact to the local retailers?
That'd be Mr Benny, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm not aware that we've received any communications, but because I hold a position on the Chisholm Institute board, I can advise what is publicly known, and that is that Chisholm's activity on that site has been unfortunately retracting over a period of time. They no longer had a need for any sort of shopfront relationships, and they've retreated to the third floor of that development. So they're still present on the site, but unfortunately not in the way that they've traditionally been by having a shopfront. We hope, putting my other hat on when I'm attending Chisholm meetings, advocating for greater presence of Chisholm in the activity centre, and we hope that other opportunities may materialise, but regrettably for number 311 Lonsdale Street, it will not include the interaction that's been there in the past.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Councillor Dark.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a supplementary on that, with the staff relocating from the ground floor to the third floor, has there been any relocation or loss of staff numbers from the total site, or are staff still within the area to come and support the local businesses?
Mr Benny, please.
Look, I'd have to take that on notice. I believe there hasn't been much of a reduction of staffing numbers. It's just that there's been a modification of, the Institute is moving to more hybrid models of education now, so it has resulted in some reductions in direct learning. But I could take that on notice and get a bit of an update from the Chisholm CEO for the council.
Thank you, Mr Benny. Councillor Dark.
No further questions, Mayor.
Thank you. These are some of the things that I've attended since the meeting. Friday the 20th of November 2020, SIGMA's annual general meeting via Zoom. Monday the 23rd of November 2020, Mayor's message pre-recorded Victorian Youth Week celebration. Wednesday the 25th of November 2020, Vic annual general meeting via Zoom. Thursday the 26th of November 2020, Mayor's message pre-recorded 2020 Christmas carols and council induction legal obligations of councillors. Saturday the 30th of November 2020, Councillor Strategic Workshop. Monday the 30th of November 2020, Mayor's message pre-recorded CGD Summer Reading Club, and also pre-recorded Make Your Move pledging to walk more. Thank you. Mr. Benny, there is some questions taken on notice at the last meeting.
Yes, Madam Mayor, there were 27 questions taken on notice, councillor questions taken on notice at the last meeting. They've all been answered and are tabled this evening.
Thank you. Item number 7, urgent business.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a motion for urgent business, that an item of urgent business be heard in relation to Council providing financial support to agencies assisting the victims of the recent flooding and Cyclone Molave in Cambodia and Vietnam.
Mayor, I second that the item be heard.
Right. Moved by Councillor Mamedi, seconded by Councillor Dark. Is there any questions on this to be an urgent matter? No. Is there any opposition for it to be heard as an urgent matter? No. Move.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that the Council officers arrange to donate $10,000 to Care Australia, Vietnam and Cambodian flood appeals to assist their current efforts for victims of recent flooding and Cyclone Molave in both Cambodia and Vietnam.
Second that, Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Mamedi, seconded by Councillor Dark. Is there any questions, councillors? Is there any question? Councillor Trong.
On behalf of Vietnamese communities, I would like to say thank you.
No, not yet. Sorry.
Okay.
We're moving in second, and if you've got a question.
Okay.
So, any questions, councillors? Any opposition? No, the item is carried. Now, if anyone wants to speak on that behalf. Councillor Trong.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of Vietnamese communities, and I would like to say thank to Australian people. Vietnam welcome us here and think about the people in our country as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mamedi, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As everybody knows, from early October 2020, an unprecedented rainfall has caused several floodings across Cambodia and Vietnam, killing approximately 120 people and displacing over 121,000 people. More than 100,000 hectares of farmland have been destroyed, and more than 1 million people have been affected by the rising water levels, which in some areas have reached their highest peaks in more than 20 years. As we all know, Council has supported many countries around the world. I'm very proud to live in the most multicultural city in Australia, over 157 different nationalities, and when things like these happen around the world, City of Greater Dandenong are one of the first ones to put up their hand. Whether it be a small or large donation, it's the recognition, I think, and we're always very supportive of our local community who have many families and friends around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mamedi. Any other speakers? Councillor Lim, please.
Madam Mayor, just on behalf of Cambodian community, I would like to thank all the councillor, all the officer, and also to the CEO for approval this fund for the unfortunate people in Cambodia and Vietnam. Thank you so much for your kindness. And this one can show the world that City of Greater Dandenong is play a major part in act of kindness. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Is there any other urgent business? No? I declare the meeting closed at 8:43. Thank you for your attendance.